Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Get ready to find your free will from your roots in the stars. Hello again, this is Sue Rose Minahan, Talk Cosmos, July 20th. 2019, and this program repeats on Thursday, July 25th at 6 to 7 a.m. We're at 1150 KKNW. You can also find us at Podcast One. That's a brand new edition, and it's online with iTunes, so you can sign up and hear all our archives. But tonight's subject, we are still in the Cancer archetype, and the subject is Cancer North Node History References. It is a polarity on the axis having Cancer on the natural zodiac, Cancer and Capricorn. And generally it's a time when it's restructuring the balance. And they are cardinal signs. Cardinal means action, and that starts off the zodiac in Aries, and Cancer is the second sign of that. There's quite a few factors here, and as far as just beginning, I think I'll just begin with introducing my guest, because together we can chatter about many of these details. And it's Katherine Metcalf. She's a professional astrologer, hypnotherapist, an intuitive, a tarot card reader, and she does consultations and specializes in transits and career. And, of course, you can find Katherine at Talk Cosmos. If you go under guests, it'll stay there forever. And she's from Illinois, near the Chicago area in East Moline, I hope I'm saying that right. And she teaches astrology and tarot at Blackhawk College there in Moline. And she has quite a legacy of her own, featured on television, various stations. She's published articles and been interviewed, and she hosts a metaphysical monthly meeting of her own in East Moline, and has a YouTube astrological program that on a weekly basis. So there's lots of ways to connect with Katherine, and I am most pleased to say hello, Katherine. We are beginning. Hi.
Hi, Sue. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, finally, we managed to connect after meeting. It's just great.
Absolutely.
And historical references have been such a focus of interest of mine. And I suppose, I know we had many ways to go about it, but I'll begin with the one idea. Oh, okay, I'm going to interrupt my own self just to remind folks that this last week on the 16th was a full moon I've got it pulled up wrong. Anyway, it was a full moon in Capricorn, 24 degrees on the 16th. And so we might bring reference to that and the timing of it and all of that. But in the meantime, I did pull up an electional research on solar fire. And for those people that aren't astrologers, that is a wonderful program, software program that helps with a lot of astrology. And there were 7 matches when I pulled it up from 3000 BC to 3000 AD. I wanted to get the full spectrum. And there were 7 matches, right? So what I wanted to match was what's happening right now so that we could get some recurrences. And it was North Node in Cancer. And then for the South Node, which is in Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn conjunct the South Node, which is pertinent right now, because it is conjunct, and then Pluto, which is in Capricorn, which is a slower moving planet. And from that, there were these various events. And it started back in 1425 BC when 2 women pharaohs, Nefertiti, and just before that, and I have a hard time saying his name, it's Hatshepsut, Hatshepsut, but they ruled along with their husbands, and after 20 years, made a major as women pharaohs. And then later, the next one was also in BC, but skipping further to AD, there was another woman, significant ruler in the Byzantine, an empress, Theodora. And she also ruled with her husband and was very significant because she helped make major changes. In fact, all these women made really significant changes. And Constantinople was a wonderful city as a result. So their legacy is quite significant. And I might say prior to then, the fourth one that was before 2019, because the rest were right here in this year, was when the Druids in Britain were overtaken by Rome, and also when Paul the Apostle was having this missionary. So it seems like another theme here was this somewhat about spirituality. You know, the Druidism was about worshiping everything that in nature had a spirit. And it wasn't really called a religion. It wasn't even referred to as paganism until the 20th century, and Christianity decided to name it like that. And in fact, it's sort of interesting because Paul was doing his missionary work at that time. So, and I guess I could have said this before introducing you, but I'm glad I did it this way. As you said, well, that this program really is the evolution of female leadership. That's the feminine leadership. And of course, male and females have feminine in us as well as masculine. But also through the female personage and letting go of a structural system, you know, and getting that connecting to the polarities.
Yeah.
So, right. You brought up some interesting factors currently with a lot of interesting factors.
Yeah. Well, and thank you, because you did so much great research on, the early, really early history. And my research is more on, recent history from the 1900s, basically.
Which helps. It kind of clarifies the lens, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
But I did want to touch on the lunar eclipse that just happened on the 16th.
Oh, good.
And, it was a doozy, I mean, the moon is at 24 degrees Capricorn, and it's conjunct Pluto at 21 degrees Capricorn. So, it was probably major intense emotions,
Yes.
and then it's also conjunct, Saturn as well. So, and full moons are a time of letting go, releasing, purging, all of that, just cleaning out your closets.
Yeah, but no
both,
simple task, right?
Yeah, both physically and emotionally, and mentally. And when I was writing my article about the energy for the whole month for July, the full moon is, this full moon is a partial lunar eclipse. So that always brings way more energy to it. And it lasts longer. So it can affect us, for 6 months or more. So, but this full moon is square to the dwarf planet Eris.
Ooh.
And Eris is named after a Greek female warrior who exposes abuses of power and manipulation by men. And the week before, we just saw Jeffrey Epstein be exposed in the news for sex trafficking and with younger women. So I think that is really powerful, and it's starting to play out. We're starting to see that.
It does upset the apple cart with the apple. Wasn't Eris the one who started the Trojan War in the mythology when she wasn't invited. They knew she was a troublemaker, as one, as it goes. And so she threw the apple and said, to the fairest of them all, and Hera, who's Juno, and Aphrodite, who's Venus, and also the wise woman, not Apollo, Athena.
Athena,
Yeah,
yeah.
the warrior Athena. They all tried to claim, but then finally Aphrodite with giving her, promising the most beautiful woman who happened to be Helen of Troy,
Hmm.
boy, then my mind just jumps over to something I don't think is pertinent, but I am remembering that Helen was also a twin, a set of two female twins that was born at the same time as the Mercury twins, Castor and
Oh,
Pollux.
Castor and Pollux. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the sun is conjunct Pollux
Oh my.
on
So
this full moon lunar eclipse.
so there's
So, and Pollux can be, tyrannical behavior. So, so it's like on a global level, not just here in the United States, but we could be seeing more, there could have been more brutal behavior around that full moon. But whoever's doing it isn't going to get away with it because there's going to be repercussions thanks to Eris.
well,
So,
yes, plus with Saturn down, the ethical boundary setter, being
right.
with Pluto, the transformer that's saying life or death. Here we go. I mean, that it can be literal, and of course, it can be quite
Right.
as an
Right.
analogy. Yes. So, but
Yeah.
things, if they don't work, they're going out. So it
Mhm.
is powerful. You're absolutely right. And we're in that eclipse season still, and it lasts and intense.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
For people,
So,
I was just going to say the time back east, that would be at 5:38 p.m. Or on the West Coast, 2:38 p.m. But go
yeah, I
ahead.
have 5:38 p.m. New York
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think it's exciting for us to be living in this time now. And, the nodes change. Like the North Node is in Cancer, like every 18 to 19 years. Okay.
Yes.
It's in each zodiac sign every 18 to 19 years. So, I'm a pretty hardcore feminist. I think I was born a little bit too late because I didn't get to, be a real hippie child in the 60s.
Oh, there's still time. There's time.
I was here, but I wasn't protesting yet. So,
well, I wasn't either, but hey, it's okay. We have time.
But I think with this, the North Node in Cancer, it's really, the North Node is like our destiny. It's what we're supposed to be working towards. And then opposing it, and Cancer, and the sign of Cancer, it's feminine energy. And like you said, every single individual has both male and female energy. But so for each one of us, we need to honor the feminine side of us, the softer side, the side that, loves family and is nurturing and comforting. And then it's opposing the South Node in Capricorn, which the South Node is what we're supposed to be letting go of and releasing. It's old, outworn behavior. And in Capricorn has everything to do with rules and tradition and foundations and structures. And they're seesawing against each other. And it's exciting that we're living in this time because we really are seeing a huge shift away from male dominated society to more women getting involved.
Yeah, I think everything needs a check and balance system. Everything has its power and strength, but if it isn't tempered somewhat by the polarity, it goes into its shadow, and
Right.
that's when you have the problems. And interestingly about these eclipses is that you not only deal with your own, you deal with everybody else going through theirs too. It's this collective. So it really gets to be this complexity of a movement, a wave that goes through. And I'll say too that there's an orb. It's 24 degrees, but on a I suppose on a cautious side, you could say at least 19 to 29, and depending on the planet, the sun, a lot of times 10 degrees. So it can be a lot of people in the cardinal signs, even.
Right.
Yep.
That are really feeling it.
Right.
Yeah.
And cardinal wants action, so everybody's trying to do something. Well, that
Yes.
doesn't always work out so well, depending
Yeah.
on who's doing what.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
like for instance, you brought up, okay, the 3 dates that I brought up with that electional, which happened to be, again, the nodes in North Node Cancer, and then with the South Node, that conjunction with Saturn, which of course is its own sign, and then with Pluto. But July 4th was one of them. Well, as you brought out, President Trump, which was quite controversial, just as a statement, of
Hmm.
bringing out this military brigade of parade and et cetera. So really looking at that, that is, and then the fact, okay, so that's the structural that again and again is brought up with those past events that some of them that I didn't bring up was, well, like for instance, going back with Rome taking over Britain,
Hmm.
is the breaking, or every single one of them was a change of leadership or some kind of dynamic. I think King Solomon died in one, and then the northern tribes of Israel broke off. So, it's a different theme, but it's the same old story. Somehow the structure is being broken. And along with it, we have 6, and this is not a prophecy for anybody, not to get reinterpreted here, but just as the facts and looking at the facts, putting them together, we do have 6 women that are now energetically, along with the other 20. I mean, it's a huge bunch of people that are running for office on the Democratic Party, but 6 of them happen to be women.
Yeah, and I mean, even just going, and that's amazing, that we've come to this place, which I'm so happy that we're there. But I mean, this last, Cancer and Capricorn node energy started November 2018, and it goes until May 2020. And, right in November 2018 is when 117 women were elected to Congress. I mean, it's like unheard of numbers, when they had the midterm voting. So, the face of Congress itself
That's right.
changed dramatically. We
And
had color, we had women, it wasn't.
yeah, different ages. I mean, a
Men.
huge spectrum. And we find that in a lot of cities too, with council men or council people and mayors and governors. Like I think there a few of the women, or one of the women I know is a mayor. So what that says to me is that the collective voices just have different, really a diverse perspective of,
Yeah.
and so in other words, like in any family, you kind of get used to how things are brought up or the conversation. But here, the dynamics are altering.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Me Too movement obviously falls into this, discussion of the North Node and the South Node. Absolutely. So, and then also, I think the changes that we're experiencing due to climate change is also related to this push pull. And we're seeing more flooding now, too. And I mean, especially with what's happening in New Orleans and Alabama, and North Node is in Cancer. Cancer is a water sign.
Well, and if I might add, right now, as a backdrop, and for astrologers especially, knowing the long cycles, that Neptune is smack dab right in the middle of its long cycle, and Pisces is its own
Pisces,
sign.
yeah.
So it seems to me that that's a dissolving, in Pisces. I mean, that's the last, well, not the last planet, it's before Pluto, but Pluto now is almost transformationally taking control, not controlling, but influencing, ruling the Plutonians, all these other dwarf planets of great transformation. But
Mm-hmm.
so I was
Yeah.
saying that it has to do with nature, and what we don't control is
Yeah, absolutely.
Neptune.
I think one of the negative side effects that we're seeing during this time frame too is the humanitarian crisis at the border, and seeing families ripped apart, which is also having to do with Cancer and Capricorn nodal energy.
It is the mother nurturing family. Yes, roots.
Right.
All of
Right.
this. So we are in
Yeah.
the archetype. Yep.
Yeah. We're living it. So, and then I went back um, from this time right now all the way back to 1925. So, do you want to go over a few of
Well,
the
there
other ones?
were, and I will, since I printed this out, I was most happy, and I might say to people, with the North Node in Cancer, it's now, as Catherine has said, November 2018 to May of 2020, but the last one is April 2000 to October 2002, which we could,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was early 81 to 83, March, and then it was December 62 to August 64. Then we go back to the wartime, May 1944 to December 45, because this cycle repeats like perfectly. Venus is the most perfect, imbalanced, not imbalanced, not that means it is
Right.
yes. Thank you. Planet,
Yeah.
so it's very symmetrical. It makes this beautiful five-pointed Venus star every time it conjuncts with the sun, which is a whole other wonderful subject. So then, before going back, and you can mention these again, but perhaps this will give people a little review. October 25 to April 27, which is just prior to the big collapse
Mm-hmm.
economically. So
Right. Just before the Big Depression.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. And well, let's talk about the last one, which was April 2000 to October 2002.
Okay.
And some of the women that we saw kind of rise up during that time. One was Hillary Clinton, actually became the first female senator from New York. And then I'm not sure if I'm saying her name correctly, but Sila Calderon was the first female governor for Puerto Rico. And I actually wondered if she's the governor, when they had the big hurricane down there.
I don't know.
I don't know if she's still the governor now.
I'm not sure. I thought there was a man that was speaking on the news, but
okay.
he, how he represented it, I'm not sure. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Next one was Frida.
Yeah, and then Frida Kahlo, who
great
was
artist.
Was an amazing, artist from Mexico,
Which
was actually honored with a stamp.
And I will say that some of this, because we're evolving, consciousness is evolving. So looking way back, it was very unheard of to have in Egypt women pharaohs, and then later in the Byzantine to have Theodora, be so active. But here, and she was considered a feminist. I guess I did not realize that, but a lot of people now look at her towards that. Well, Frida Kahlo also is referred to as that. Now, eventually, it won't have to be such a battle to claim your space in life. Hopefully, we'll begin to learn to merge together and learn how to talk. But again, it shows that theme, that independent, I'm the feminist. Yeah.
Right.
Frida Kahlo, I'm saying. So.
Yeah. So, and that was a big deal for her as a woman and, to be featured as a woman and as an artist. So, and then J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter books.
Yes.
So she actually became the first female author of the fastest selling book ever.
Wowie.
Yeah. So, and back in the old days, mostly men got acknowledgement for their writings. I mean, there was Emily Dickinson and some people like that.
But it's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she really is a legacy of her own virtue. I mean, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody knows her name.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and even Disney, no, not Disney, who is at Universal Studios even,
Oh, the other
Harry
one,
Potter place.
just on the movies, there is Mary Poppins, the woman that wrote Mary Poppins. Come to think of it, I happen to have seen those movies, the sequel, her second one, but she too is a female author that has just, It's been, I well, I just saw it, and whether it was actually in the movies during the cancer time, I don't know. We'll finish this one, and then we'll take a little break. Go ahead.
Okay. So, well, and Mexico has had a corrupt government down there for years, for a long, 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 long time. And then, so in 2000 to 2002, they actually voted for Vicente Fox, hoping that, they would have more of a stable democracy kind of thing going on. So that's a little bit of a shift also. And then we also had the invasion of Afghanistan.
A lot of political rearranging of boundaries. And I guess, too, it's if we look back on those first few examples, it was in that area of the generally Middle East that, of course, that's our history, too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. We will return shortly. This is Talk Cosmos. It is July 20th with Katherine Metcalf. Metcalf.
Mm-hmm.
In Illinois. And while we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. Currently, we are in the period of Cancer. By leaving a cycle based on connecting mental communication to the external, the energy of Cancer involves emotions, which create our personal story through our emotional associations and attachments. As a cardinal water sign that is nurturing, Cancer needs to process emotions in one's own internal rhythm of cycles in order to complete an evolution.
Hi, this is Willie Bodrak, a retired expat from Seattle, now living in Mexico. You're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk 1150 AM, where we understand how to implement our free will through the cosmos.
Alternative Talk, 1150 on AM, 98.9 HD3 on HD, 1150kknw.com on the web.
Hi again, this is Talk Cosmos, July 20th, repeating at 6 o'clock in the morning on July 25th. And our subject today, or tonight, is Cancer North Node, historical references. And I am speaking with Katherine Metcalf from East Moline, Illinois. And you can check us out at Talk Cosmos, find out all about Katherine. And then again, if podcast 1 is a great way to look at all the archives. So, Katherine, we were talking about, and I might just remind people that with the North Node, it repeats, as Katherine has said, systematically every 18 and a half years, and then every 19 years, exactly at the same degree, I believe. But it's this beautiful pattern that repeats and repeats. So in astrology, we go back into history and kind of get some themes, like what was really happening. And I had pulled up some chart dates that went way back to 17 BC, around there, systematically, when we had the North Node in Cancer, and in the South Node, that's Capricorn, had Saturn conjunct and Pluto near it, in Capricorn. And it showed these themes of femininity in the sense of women joining leaders like Nefertiti and Empress Theodora and the Byzantine, and of course Nefertiti was with Egypt in 18th, the 18th dynasty, and they both made illustrious, significant changes in the leadership, joining with their husbands or afterwards. And again, there was various evidence of the breakdown of the societal structures. So I think, Katherine, we're going back to the last time at September 1981 to March 83.
Yes. Yeah. So as far as the female advances or feminine advances go, Sandra Day O'Connor was elected the first female Supreme Court justice. And then, our space the Apollo, the 50-year anniversary, I think, of the Apollo landing is happening now. So space is a big deal right now. We're, looking at that again. And Sally Ride was actually the very first female in space for the United States.
Very
So,
significant.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, very significant. Sorry.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. So, and then a couple of other major things that happened in other countries was that France decided to abolish capital punishment, which is a huge shift, in how people think.
It is. It's
And
very
yeah,
female oriented with the cancer nurturing.
yes, yeah. And then unemployment in the UK reached an all-time high, and unemployment, goes right along with the energy of cancer, which is, do we feel secure in our lives, mentally, physically, emotionally? So the unemployment in the UK reaching the all-time high relates to that.
Yes.
So then we've got from December 1962 to August 1964, the very first woman in space was from Russia. And then the very first female won the Nobel Peace Prize for physics. So that happened. And then, like I was referring back to this before, I wish I had been old enough to be protesting or involved in the civil rights, activity that was going on then, because it's one of those, it's a core issue for me is, I have Libra rising, so I'm all about it needs to be equal and fair for everybody. So, 1963, Martin Luther King did his beautiful, I Have a Dream speech. And in November 1963, John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And then after that, the Civil Rights Act became a reality in 1964.
Very interesting in the concept relating this, that it was another measurement of trying to get the polarities, the equality of our of our dignity as people, because everybody is a person, and of course we come from our own backgrounds, but yet accepting everybody as.
Yeah. So in May of 1944 to December of 1945, we all, anybody that knows history knows that was during World War II. So, there were 150,000 women working in the Women's Army Corps, which was a big deal because prior to that time, most women, I think, in the United States were, homemakers. So when the guys got called off to war, they stepped up and worked outside of the home.
Yeah, there weren't any people. They had to.
Yeah.
I think many, enjoyed it. Right.
Yeah. So, and then 1944, D-Day, the Battle of Normandy, and World War II basically came to an end in 1945.
Which relates, I'm thinking of that whole theme, looking back of the structure, as we were saying, what has existed, in this sense, protecting it, which is also very Cancerian, to protect.
Yeah, and Capricorn is very much about boundaries and physical structures and all of that. So, it's just so easy to see this now looking at the events that happened. So then the last area that I looked at was October 1925 to 1927. And there was a woman named Nellie Ross who became the first woman governor of Wyoming, which is pretty groovy.
Pretty incredible. Wyoming. She must have been a tough cookie.
I know. Who would have thunk, right?
I know. And that's, yes, just before the big crash, couple of years, the times were probably swinging pretty high back then.
Yeah. Yep. So, and then Margaret Sanger, who she actually founded a birth control organization, which was really about, being smart and how many children you have and educating women and all of that. That actually later became Planned Parenthood.
That's
she started
astounding.
it
Yes, because
between 25 and 27.
that truly relates to cancer as a family and the boundaries and the limitations and the rights. You know, it once again brings up all this balanced theme. That's
Yeah, and we're seeing it play out now too, with all
oh
of the
yes,
states like going to the opposite extreme and wanting to, throw women in jail for having an abortion. So, it's amazing to me that we were moving forward in 1925 and now we're moving backwards again. So I guess it's my thought process is like, oh my gosh, do we ever find that equal balance, that balance between the male, female, and equality? It's going to keep coming around every 18 years. So I guess there's going to always be something that we're working on.
well yes, it has to go in little stages.
Yeah.
Everything does. It's so incredible. Although with or else our sudden changes. I was just thinking that's 95 years ago. And so it'd be fascinating. Well, about 94 years. And I think 94 is a major cycle. Most people aren't always living to 94, so we don't think of it. But I'm trying to remember which cycle it is, 94, which could have something to do with, it'll come to me.
Uranus or Neptune or something.
Yeah.
Transiting.
Yeah, it wouldn't be Neptune,
Uranus,
but it
might
would
be
be Uranus is 84, I believe, because it's an 84-year cycle. But it is maybe, and it's not Saturn. Saturn's 29. Well, at any rate. Okay.
Yeah, interesting though. And then the last thing from that time frame was that John Scopes, who was a teacher in Tennessee, actually was arrested and had to go to trial for teaching evolution to his students, which was going against the Christian fundamental, way that the schools were run at that time.
Yes, and that has to do with birth and cancer. And with the ones I found earlier, it did seem that there was some kind of spirituality that there was. And maybe because when one form comes, it wants to, people want to establish the rules maybe of their own. I mean, I'm thinking of the Druids where Rome came and overtook ancient Britain. So Britain came with its own, left its old ways. And I really should give the years for that to people, I guess. That was in the year, boy, I have it all down in different ones, and here I am stuttering around. Well, the years, okay, let me think here. Okay, let's just go back to that later. Sorry about that. Okay. But it is important somehow to think that these boundaries aren't just land. They are, according to religion, whether it was Solomon dying in the north of Israel, breaking off. And, okay, I've got my list here. It was back in, 47, the year 47.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a long time ago. Because the first one was in 1425, and that was with the two pharaohs of Egypt, the women pharaohs. And then in 923 BC was when King Solomon died and the northern tribes broke off. So that has to do with about boundaries and the et cetera. And then with 47 AD, February 22nd, actually, there's actually dates when it comes up, Paul was doing missionaries, and the Druidism was really the ended after 1,000 years, or many, many years of the Celts. It was with the Celts, and it's a related, shamanism and spirits with which is really more of the matriarchal thinking, I think you might say, or the feminist. I mean, we think of it perhaps as who knows how long, but it was probably such an ancient belief, or not just belief, but way of worshiping life.
Yeah. So I think that we've made a really good point about, finding the healthy balance and equality of the male female archetypes, and I wanted to take time, if we have time,
Yes.
to talk about some of the female, because there's 6 women running for president now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a big deal. That's a huge change. Yeah, in my lifetime, I saw Hillary, and then now, all of these fabulous women too that are running. So Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris. I know you looked up Marianne Williamson. I looked up Amy Klobuchar and who am I forgetting? Kristen Gillibrand and Tulsi also. Gabbard. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, lots of different women, and they all have kind of really different energy as well. And I was just curious to see, because we've got this Cancer Capricorn energy going on, who has like strong Cancer in their chart. And Elizabeth Warren and Marianne Williamson both have the sun in Cancer and with Uranus conjunct it.
I was amazed. Yes. And in fact, Elizabeth Warren is a solstice child. She was born June 22nd, 1949, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, time unknown, but 0 Cancer, and Uranus like minutes away. I think it's literally 13 minutes. They're so conjunct.
Yeah. It's really, really close. Yeah, from 45 to 57, 12 minutes.
Yeah. Wow. And then Marianne Williamson, she was born, and I looked these up thankfully because of your diligence here, so this is great teamwork. July 8th, which isn't far from our solar birthday ourselves with the United States of America.
Right.
And she was born 1952, and we know her time and place because she's such an active person on many fields. It's an astrodienst. So if anybody, the free astro.com is a great service. But she was born in Houston, Texas at 3:53 a.m. And so she too has Uranus and
the sun conjunct
Venus conjunct her sun in Cancer.
Oh,
yes.
Very interesting.
It is, but her moon is in Capricorn. Late Capricorn, so that's quite significant, that polarity, just like the nodes are right now,
Right. Very interesting.
So she must be a full moon child when you think about it. So one's a solstice, and the other's a full moon.
Oh, that's fascinating.
It is.
So Elizabeth is a new moon and Marianne is a full moon.
Yeah, because in astrology, for our audience, of course, astrologers, it's one of the great factors that becomes evident more and more. But you see it in living life. You can see it in theory, but you see this practice. Like, who are these people that are really have the gumption and desire to get up there and be so vulnerable? And especially for Cancer, that's very vulnerable.
Yes. Yeah. Because you don't typically think of Cancers as being like strong leaders. I tend to think of them as more
support
and nurturing and supportive. Yeah. Usually
support system. But they must feel a great identity when the United States, of course, July 4th is a Cancer country, and the moon is in Aquarius. And the fact that they have this strong conjunction with Uranus, both of them, and most of the presidents, when I noticed, are either, the predominant signs are both Aquarius and Scorpio.
Yeah. Which is what Kamala Harris is.
Yes. So that was interesting.
Yeah. And she has her North Node in Gemini, which is interesting just in the fact that when the inauguration happens.
Oh, yes.
And also when we'll be voting, which is in November of 2020, the North Node will have left Cancer and gone into Gemini.
Yeah, I looked up, that's very true, but I looked up November 11th, 2020 because, that's when we vote. And I placed it in D.C., not knowing, because the problem is that you can go all the way to Hawaii and their timing. So it's pretty complicated. But anyway, I put it in D.C. at 8 o'clock. And so it was interesting to see, just for Warren and Williamson, who are the cancer people. Oh, and I might add, here I'm interrupting myself, but Kamala Harris was born October 20th, 1964 in Oakland, California, and I don't have the time. But going back to Warren and Williamson, there were some interesting connections with both of those charts. It would be a study later to really look at, to determine. And of course, and what I did was I put the election as the center, and on the bi-wheel I put the candidates on the outside, because we could have a time there, 8 o'clock, whereas with Williamson, we don't know what time it is. Or I guess we could put the sun on the first house. And for those non-astrologers, these are techniques. There's always a lot to learn in astrology. And like any language, it has its tools, and that's so handy.
Yeah. And looking at, I did pull up some of the men's too, and that are running. And Joe Biden is actually a Scorpio as well.
I was amazed. Well, no, or is he? Because he's right, the 20th of November. Was that Scorpio or Sag? It was Scorpio?
He's at 27 Scorpio, and it's conjunct his Mercury and Venus. And they're in his 12th house, which is interesting.
I am amazed, because he just seems very much more like a Sag. The 20th of November. Yeah, that's sometimes a cusp, I
his
thought.
rising sign is Sag.
Okay.
So there you go.
Yeah, I personally
right
like
about
it.
that.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. Oh, and one of the things I wanted to point out too is that Donald Trump is a Gemini as well.
Yes.
And so is
and a full moon at that.
Yes.
Yes, Sag.
Yes, on a full moon. And so is Amy Klobuchar, has like 3 planets. She has her sun, her moon, and Mercury all in Gemini. She's got
Oh, go ahead.
Lots of Gemini.
Well, she was born May 25th, 1960. I looked up every single person's birth date, but I did. I was really, I went down that. Well, I've got 29 degrees Virgo, and I just went down that rabbit hole. I was consumed, and it was fascinating, because there's like, okay, well, I'll have to change Biden to Scorpio. Well, that makes him just as far as statistics a contender. I mean, if you look at most, and there were 2 Aquarius. Jay Inslee here at the state of Washington is an Aquarian, and John Hickenlooper, because they're both born very close. Jay Inslee is February 9th, 1951, and John Hickenlooper is February 7th, 1952. So.
Oh, wow. And Bernie is an Aquarius too. Or no,
he's a Virgo. He's the only one outside of the loop.
He's a Virgo.
Yeah, he was the only Virgo. There's Sag. There's there's a lot of cardinal. There's a lot of cardinal signs, I was realizing.
Yeah, and that makes sense for what we're going through right now with all the cardinal.
Actually,
aspects,
Julian
right?
Castro's a Virgo too. The twin. He was born the 17th.
Yeah. One of the things I just wanted to
September.
mention about Donald Trump's chart is he has the North Node in Sagittarius, and meaning that he's got the South Node in Gemini.
So it'll be a nodal reversal?
Yes.
That's
so that
significant.
makes me think he's not going to win.
It's curious. We shall wait and see. It's always, I remember with the last election, there were so many fascinating, and interestingly, with all the debate afterwards and everybody apologizing and whatnot, because everybody had it supposedly mistaken. But the truth was, both people, in a sense, won, meaning Hillary and Trump. And there was a lot of confusion, I heard, with people wondering which one, how is this going to be? They had all their logic. But first of all, nobody really knew the birth date of Hillary. So that added to a lot of confusion. And I decided to choose the one that wasn't really being looked at, which is, I think, in the morning, because I myself have had to look at a lot of charts and I've had to disband any judgment to look at it.
Right.
And when I saw that, I could see that it really supported a lot of her feminine children attitudes. But the point is that after the election, she won the majority vote, and she was in the news all the time. So it was almost like a counterbalance. It was as though both people were really happening. Well, we have 5 minutes. I just want to take a little moment here to say that next week on the 27th, we begin Leo archetype, and we have a new, as of the second season here, a new format where it's the cosmic collaboration. So it'll be the Leo cosmic collaboration, and we'll have several. The topic of that is generosity and purposeful legacy, or the fifth house. And myself and various guests, which will be Shannon Hayes, Bear River, and Karen Wenderland, will all be commenting in their own fashion about it. So that's a fascinating way. And you can always find us at Podcast One now, or Talk Cosmos, or 1150 KKNW. And right now I am speaking with Katherine Metcalf from Illinois. And you can find her at Talk Cosmos too. And I think, what is your website, Katherine?
It's pretty simple. KatherineMetcalf.com.
Ta-da! Very smart.
And it's Katherine with a K.
Okay.
Katherine Metcalf, Metcalf.
All right. And I'll say okay to that. That's good. Yeah. So let's see. We were talking about the elections and the females. And you know what's interesting? In a lot of the examples that you wonderfully pulled up that were fascinating is that space kept popping up a lot. I mean, for the first woman. And science. I thought that's most amazing. I haven't looked at those chart times to see where Uranus is, if that was instigating something, which it is now, which always it is. But
that would be interesting to look at. More research to do.
Yes. It's maybe some other people will bounce in. Well, it's learning to navigate with different thought patterns. We're such a small globe now with all the communication possibilities. It's really the struggle how to connect and with cultural differences and more than that, just roots. What are our roots? I know that with these nodes, like North Node in Cancer, the past, and not just the recent past, but the distant past, is flushing forward. Very often, in personal lives. And it is all very personal. Cancer is such a personal sign.
Yes. Yeah. And I know a lot of people are really feeling the transitions that we're going through.
Indeed. In significant ways. Big changes. People making really landmark moves. I mean, living in homes for 30, 40 years and suddenly bouncing away. I mean, not bouncing away there, but they're selling and moving into other places, or 20 years. It's very dramatic shifts.
Lots of relationship changes I've been seeing this past, few months too.
Yeah, because it does have that the cardinal cross, as we call it. And for those astrologers, so Aries and Libra is on the other spectrum. They square it, so those people with this. Let's see, is there another eclipse? I think I'm trying to think. I think.
You mean in 2019? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is in December. There'll be the next eclipse because of the nodes, but not at this immediate season. So the one that was just last week on the 16th with a full moon.
Right. Yeah, there's a solar eclipse December 26th in Capricorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the nodes. Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, and that'll be the new moon, the solar eclipse. Yes. With late. Oh boy. Well, we'll have a lot to say and talk about then. But
as we always do, we're Geminis.
Yeah.
We talk about everything.
That's right. But we got to reel back, because when it comes to Cancer, it is a matter of feeling what is important. And I think that that reminder that we talk to our own tempo, we speak or we think, we feel to our own tempo. So important not to jump ahead. Katherine, I've just loved this. I really love your energy, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's my honor to be on here. I appreciate it, Sue.
Okay. Well, we'll do it again.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Be sure to tune in next Saturday at 6 p.m. to continue finding your roots in the stars.